Hi, Heather here from Creative Kiwi. Please join me as I show how I create my large Santa or Mr. and Mrs Claus advent tree. It's my new favourite design and I love it. Now I create designs, not videos, so please bear with me. Basically, a little bit about the design. I've created it with a one color on the back, so I've used bag batting on the back. One, because it adds strength, but also because I know it's going to hang on a wall, I didn't feel the need to make it completely reversible and have to use matching bobbin thread. Now, if you wanted to make this design the center of a quilt or a wall hanging, you can omit all the backing fabric if you prefer. Basically, I use the bag batting for strength, but if you want to add this to something else, just use your normal batting in the front and just skip all the directions for adding backing. Now I've made the 5x7 size for the video just because it fits into the frame easier. And as you can see, the pockets are quite small on it. You'll fit a chocolate in, which could be quite good if it's just for the grandkids. Or if you're wanting larger pockets, if you've got the larger hoop, then do a larger size. We have got four sizes, so it does get quite huge. I've got the 8x12 size that I stitched. Now that's 24 inches high, so it's quite a big design just with the. Let's get straight into it. So the first thing we need to do with all hoopings is hoop 2 layers of the fabric type water-soluble stabilizer and then use the pins at the edges. This just helps to ensure there's no movement in the hoop, and that way everything lines up and you get correct registration in your designs. So we're on to the first hooping, and we follow the same process for each hooping, which is we stitch the outline onto the stabilizer. We then add a piece of batting. I use a polyester batting. We place that over the hoop and we stitch it down. This just gives the design body, the batting. And it also stitches the fabric placement lines to help you later. So we cut away that excess batting on the front of the hoop, and you can see there's a gap there. This is we're just keeping the batting out of the seams as much as we can. Again, that helps with joining and just helps with the seams. Now we're on to just adding our fabrics. So the first piece we use on this one is the red Santa suit fabric. This section, I'm actually adding the backing fabric now. So I'm just floating that under the hoop. You can see where the fabric is. Now I've actually used that's bag batting. You can use the heavy felt. Just adds strength to the entire design. So there we go. We just go to attach on the front of the hoop the Santa fabric. And just cut away that excess red fabric on the front of the hoop. We just leave the back at the moment because we're going to add the white fabric. So if you were going to make this design and add it to your quilt or some other large project, you can just completely omit the backing fabric. We're just going to place the white fabric and attach that. Our designs, we do reversible. Then you could do this with this design. You would just have the matching fabric on the back. So when you place the red, you'd place the red fabric on the back. When you place the white, you'd place the white fabric on the back. I've just done a simple plain, the bag batting, because it's going to be hung on the wall and no one's going to see the back. So there we are, we've cut away the excess white fabric, and now because we've finished with adding the fabrics, we're going to cut away that backing fabric. And I really do recommend, if you can, to use a heavier felt or a bag backing. It just really adds strength to the design for when it's hanging. Now what we're going to do is just
complete the embroidery on the front of the hoop. So we've got a zigzag, and then it goes into the red satin stitch and then the white satin stitch. And see that still looks neat and tidy on the back. Now, where you've got the satin stitch edges, you can just trim quite close to the edge. Where it's raw, we're going to join those pieces. So just cut closer, as close as you can. It just helps you when you're joining. So as I say, anything that's just got a straight line or what I call a raw edge, you cut closer. Anything with the satin stitch, you just trim near, because we finish it later. And so there's the back, so it looks neat and tidy. Now we're on to the second hooping. And again, we follow the same process. We do the outline onto the stabilizer. We add our batting on the front of the hoop. And we get those placement lines for the fabrics. We cut away the batting. Now, if you're placing the pocket, you'll see on the stabilizer there are 2 guidelines stitched, and that's just to show you where to place your pocket. So the easiest way I found to mark a guideline was to place your tree fabric over the entire guideline and then just fold the fabric back along those marks on the stabilizer. Just so you've got a crease, you've got a line, so you know where to put that pocket top. So there we go, we've got that line there. And we've got our folded piece of fabric, and we're just going to put that over that guideline. And that just means your pocket will be in the correct place. Now the next step I found is the easiest too, is to put a piece of plastic solvay topper over the entire pieces of fabric and just tape that in place. Now, that just means you're not going to have to worry at all about your presser foot getting caught in the pocket. So then we just off to the machine and we're going to stitch that pocket down and then stitch the number. Then we're off to cut away all that excess fabric around the pocket and place our next fabric, which is the boot. So we've just got a piece of black fabric on the front of the hoop. We'll take that to the machine and we'll attach that fabric. It goes around twice just to give you a nice cutting edge. We're going to cut away that excess boot fabric, and then we're going to do the next piece of fabric, which is the gift box. And back to the machine just to attach the gift box fabric. We're going to cut away that excess gift box fabric and then just place the bow fabric. Back to the machine to attach the bow. And then we cut away that excess bow fabric. Now we've got all the fabric pieces on the front of the hoop, we just want to add a backing. So I've used bag batting as more backing fabric as it adds strength to the design. Now you can tape it on place on the back of the hoop, or as you see in my next video, I just float it under the wall. Because you can actually see through the stabilizer where the backing fabric is and ensure that it's covering all the design. Then we're just going to stitch around again just to attach that backing fabric. Now we're just going to cut away that backing fabric. And that's all the cutting for this segment. The next step is just to do a round which we call the zigzag before the join. So The machine will zigzag the raw edges, but it leaves gaps where we're going to join the different pieces of the design. So you see there's zigzag pieces and there's raw edges. So the raw edges is where we actually join something. So for this part, you can see it's the top of Santa's leg. And you just fit that in like a jigsaw, stitch line upon stitch line. Slight overlap. And then you just tape it in place outside of the stitch area. And you basically tape it in place to get it to the machine so you put it in the right area. And the join is a zigzag. So you can see there I just use my purple thing to make sure that everything's in line. And then we do the zigzag. Now you just need to stop at this point and check that the fabric has caught on both sides. And if you're happy with that join, then you just carry on to finish the design, following the colours that are in our step-by-step instructions. Now we've finished that part, we're just going to cut away the excess stabiliser. Now you cut it close to the second stitch edges. We remove the rest later, but on the bits where there's the raw edge, just cut as close as you can. Those pieces are going to be joined in a later hooping, so the tidier and closer you have it to that raw edge, the better. So the 7 stitch edges are done now, so we can leave them till later. And now we're on to the next part. As before, we start with the placement line or the guideline on the stabiliser. Then we place our beading over the top of the entire hoop, and we're going to stitch around again to attach that beading. We're going to cut away that excess beading, and then we're going to place the fabric for the apron portion of her dress. The machine, we're going to attach that apron fabric, and then there is an optional quilting that I have done. You can choose to skip it if you prefer, if you have pretty fabric. Otherwise, it does do a pretty quilting stitch. Now we cut away that excess apron fabric, and we're just going to add the next fabric, which is her dress. So we stitch the next round to attach her dress fabric. It's in 2 pieces, the neckline and the arm. And then again, we just cut away that excess fabric on the front of the hoop. Then the next step again for this segment will be just to add our backing fabric. So again, you can either tape your backing fabric on the back of the hoop, or you can float it at the machine. Well, this is an easy segment. This one, there's no joining, so we're just going to attach that backing fabric. And we don't need to worry about having any joins. Now we're just going to cut away that excess backing fabric. And it's back to the machine just to finish, basically, which is that there'll be a zigzag around the raw edges. And then you complete the design with the colours as shown in the different instructions, the 7 stitch edges. You'll see this is a quick one, this one. So all you have to do once it's finished is just cut away that excess stabiliser around the 7 stitch edges and then closer on those raw edges, just to help you with the joining. And hopefully now you're seeing that all the segments are following the same techniques, basically. You're doing your stabiliser, bashing, then placing your fabrics, cutting them away, and then adding a backing fabric. So I am going to summarise the steps on the next segments, just to so that the video isn't hours and hours long. So on to the next segment. So as before, we just stitch the guideline onto the stabiliser. We place a piece of light batting over the top of the design and attach the batting, which also stitches the fabric placement line. Then we cut away the excess batting. Now, just like we did with the previous pocket, we're just going to mark our pocket line using the tree fabric, place our folded pocket piece over the top, and then add your piece of solving and tape in place. Now we take it to the machine and we're going to attach the tree and pocket fabric and stitch the number. The next set of fabric placement is the same as before. You place your fabric piece, stitch it down, then cut it away. And we do that till we've got all the fabric on the front of the design. Next, we add the backing fabric, floating it under the hood, or you can tape it on the back. And we're just going to stitch that last round to attach the backing fabric. As before, we're just going to cut away that fabric on the back of the hood. And we're ready for the next step, which is the zigzag before the joining stitch. So it zigzags the raw edges, but it leaves gaps where we're going to join the next design. So joining is the same as before. That's where the gaps are and the zigzag, or where the design's going to be joined. So this one's going to be along the gift box. So as we did before, you're going to place that stitch line right on the stitch line. So just a slight overlap. And you're going to tape outside the stitch area. So back to your machine, and you can slow your machine down or stop and start if you like. Just anything you can do to help you get that zigzag in line. And again, just make sure that it covers both sides of the fabric. Now we're going to do the next join. So we're going to put your dress on, and it's the same thing. You're going to put your stitch line on the stitch line with a very tiny overlap, and you're going to tape it in place away from that stitch line. Back to the machine, and it will do that zigzag stitch to join. Again, make sure it covers both sides, and if you're happy with that, then you continue on to finish the embroidery design using the colours as we've got in the instructions. And there we go, the next segment is finished. So we remove it from the hoop, we cut away the stabiliser from the satin stitch edges, but take a little bit more time to cut as close as you can to those raw edges. So the next segment, as before, you stitch the guideline on your stabiliser, place your beading on top, and then cut away the beading. Next, we're going to add the fabric for the tree over the entire guideline. Fold back along the marks on the stabilizer to get your edge for your pocket. And we place our pocket on that guideline, and then as you layer a plastic solving over the top. Now, could you do it without solving? You could, but you'd have to be just watching that your presser foot doesn't get caught in the pocket. Feed to the machine to stitch down the pocket and the tree. And then we're just going to stitch the numbers. And then there is just the dividers for the pockets. Now we cut away that excess fabric from the tree in the pocket, and we're going to add the bow fabric. I'm going to add the glove, it's not the glove, it's Mrs. Claus's hand. We're going to add that at the same time. And then we'll just cut away that excess fabric on the front of the hoop. Then we're just going to add our backing fabric. And it will stitch around twice to give you a nice cutting edge. And then we're just going to cut away that backing fabric. Now we're back to the machine to do the zigzag before we join, which again zigzags the raw edges but leaves gaps where we do the joining. Right, so now we go back to adding our completed part of the design. And you can see it does fit in like a jigsaw. So we're going to take, now this is quite a big join, so take your time with this one. And basically it's going to stitch from the top down. So I start with getting those top pieces in line and taping. I do find with the join this size that I will do more stopping and starting at the machine, and you'll see it on the video. Okay, so we're at the machine. So I definitely take my time with this one. So we just watch it stitching down. I don't like stitching over tape, so you'll see that I stop the machine and remove it. But also when I'm doing that, I'm just checking that everything's still in place. So if you have the ability, just stop your machine as you need to. And there you go, I stop again, taking the tape off, but also just making sure that it's still in position. You can see I'm holding down the completed part just so we can get a nice crisp zigzag. See, I think that needs to be moved a little bit, just a notch. So there you go. I'm just very carefully manoeuvring it into place. Now I've got that purple thing tool, but you can use a pen, a chopstick, anything you like, just to keep your fingers out of the way. Now this is the biggest join for the design, probably the hardest, but the biggest join that you'll have. After that is pretty much plain sailing. And there we go. Just have a look and make sure that you have covered all those zigzag edges, that everything looks like it should do. And if you're happy, carry on with the design, following the colours shown in the instructions. You can remove that design from the hoop and just cut away the excess stabiliser close to the second stitch edges, but again taking a bit more time with the raw edge at the top where we're going to join the next designs. Onto centre space, same again. Stitch the guideline on the stabiliser, place your batting over the top, and then cut away the excess bedding. I'm going to summarise the fabric placement. You're going to place the Santa hat fabric, attach, then cut away the excess, attach the Santa hat cuffs and bobble fabric, and then cut away, and then attach the beard fabric and cut away. The last piece of fabric on the front is the base, so we're going to attach that, cut it away, and then complete the facial details on the front of the hoop. Next, we add our backing fabric on the back of the hoop, and we're going to attach that. Cut away that backing fabric, and then back to the machine for the last time to do the zigzag before the join. So we're going to place our completed part of the design along that bottom edge where there's no zigzag. And we're just going to place it up in line like a jigsaw, stitch line on stitch line, slight overlap, and just tape that in place and off to the machine. And again, just stopping and starting as you need to, just to complete that zigzag join stitch. When you're happy with the join, complete this segment of the embroidery following the colours and the instructions. Remove the design from the hoop, cut away close to those satin stitch edges, and cut as close as you can to those raw edges. Next segment, we stitch the guideline onto the stabiliser. We add our layer of batting and we cut away the batting. For the tree, we mark a crease along those guidelines for where we're going to add our pocket. Put the pocket edge against that crease, and then we're just going to put a layer of Solby plastic topper over the entire hoop. At the machine, we're going to attach the fabric in the pocket, and then we're going to stitch the numbers and then the pocket dividers. We'll cut away the excess fabric and then just add Santa's glove. We attach that at the machine. Then we cut away the excess glove fabric, and we're going to now add our backing fabric on the back of the hoop. So we float our backing fabric under the hoop, and then we're going to attach the backing fabric. Then we're going to do the zigzag. We can do that on this segment. Now we cut away our backing fabric and we're ready to do the next join. So again, we're just going to place our completed design over the top of what we have in the hoop. Then we're just going to place that stitch line upon stitch line and just tape as we go. Again, you probably want to do a little bit of stopping and starting at the machine for this join. I apologise for my hair showing in there. You'll see again, I stop and start here. So we're starting at the top and we're just going to zigzag down. Now you can stitch over tape, I just prefer not to, but I would be stopping anyway just to reassess and make sure that the design is still following that stitch line. There you see, I'll stop again. I'm not only taking the tape off, I'm also just making sure that that's still in line. Just to make sure we get both sides of that fabric joined. So take a look and make sure that the zigzags covered all the edges. And then when you're happy, just go back and finish the embroidery. Remove it all from the hoop and then just cut away your excess stabiliser. We're nearly there. Now we're doing Mrs Claus. So we've stitched the outline on the stabiliser, added our beading and cut away the beading, and now we're doing her face. So we attach the fabric in the front of the hoop, and then we're going to go straight through and do her facial features now, following the colour order we've got in the instructions. We cut away the excess face fabric, and now we're going to add to here. Now I've used quite a heavy curve for this one, so I have added a layer of solby over the top of that. And then we attach the hair at the machine. We're going to cut away that excess fabric for her hair, and we're going to add our backing fabric. So I've just floated the backing fabric under the hoop. Well, now we're just going to attach right round. Then we're going to cut away all the excess backing fabric. Then we'll go back to the machine to do the zigzag before the join. This next join, we're just going to join her at the bottom of her chin. So again, in the gap in the zigzag, we're just going to put stitch line upon stitch line and tape in place before we get to the... This is a fairly easy join, so we're just going to stitch that zigzag. Have a quick look, make sure it looks okay. And then when you're happy, just go back off and finish the second stitch edges on the design. And again, just trim away that excess stabiliser, taking a bit of extra care just at that side bit. On to the next one. Right, as this is the last hooping, we're also going to add our hand tab. So we stitch our guideline onto the stabiliser. Then we're just going to add the folded piece of ribbon or cord and place at the top and tape it in place. Then we're going to add our batting on top and stitch it down, which attaches the ribbon and the batting. We're going to cut away the excess batting, and we're going to do the last part of the tree. So again, place your tree fabric over the guideline, fold it back to give yourself a crease, and we're going to add the pocket. We place your layer of solby over the top and tape in place. We're going to attach that at the machine and we'll stitch the numbers and the pocket divider. Now we cut away that excess tree and pocket fabric. Then we're on to our final piece of fabric, which is our star. So again, we're going to place the star fabric over the entire guideline. Crease your fabric down to give you a placement line, put your pocket on and your solby, tape it all in place, and then we're off to the machine. And we're just going to stitch down that star fabric and just stitch the number 1. Very nearly there. Now, I missed this completely on the video, but you cut away the fabric around the star and then add your backing fabric. So I'm floating it under the hoop and then just stitching that next round to attach your backing fabric. Now we cut away that backing fabric and then back to the machine for the zigzag before the join. For the very last time, we're going to do that final join. So again, you could tell me how to do it now. You just place your design between the gaps in the zigzag, stitch line upon stitch line, and you tape in place. And this really is an easy join. So back to your machine, and again, just taking your time, just complete that zigzag join. So again, you can slow your machine down, you can stop or start your machine as you like. Just ensuring that the zigzag is stitching along the joins of the two pieces of fabric. I feel very, very close to finishing there. I really hope you're enjoying it. Now, just finish your decorative stitches, which is just the tree and the star, and you are done. It has been a mammoth project, or as I say, I really hope you've enjoyed it. Just take it out of the hoop and cut away that excess stabilizer. Now, I'm so excited at finishing, I didn't get a video of the next step, which is basically just using hot water to remove all traces of that stabilizer from the design. So I have just got a photo that I've added.